Tired of doing investment research on stock markets? Wants to go for a walk outside the house with a friend? Introducing iCapital, where you can get investment advice on the go. It is accessible via app and website. Subscribe now to iCapital for stock news. iCapital is reliable because they thoroughly research listed companies, economies, and stock markets. iCapital provides a clear perspective of how markets interact and how it influences your investment. When investors and traders are debating whether to buy or sell their stocks, fret not, as iCapital will recommend Malaysian and global stocks. iCapital is available on Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and Huawei App Gallery.
Hi, good morning everyone, or if you're in a different time zone, good afternoon, or maybe good evening. Welcome to Capital Dynamics YouTube, and for those of you who are new, we have quite a number of new subscribers recently, so maybe I just introduce and explain a little bit. I'm Teng Bu, I'm from Capital Dynamics, and I'm also an adjunct professor at University Technology Sydney. For those of you who got the facts wrong, I am a Malaysian. I only hold the Malaysian passport. I don't have a PR in Australia, a PR in Singapore, a PR in Hong Kong. People who know me describe me as probably one of the most patriotic Malaysians you can find. So let me just clarify those few things, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like it, debate, say, comment whatever you want to, but make sure the comments are not personal, because that is not professional. What we want to achieve with the YouTube of Capital Dynamics is to be able to bring out facts, truth, which probably a lot of people are not aware of. Like, for example, our last week video on the KL Singapore high-speed rail. I think the topic, as I mentioned last week, is very complex. It is not simple, and to put it within less than an hour, I have to leave out a lot of jargon, a lot of technical stuff. But what we like to do with our YouTube channel is to bring out aspects, facts that most of the time are not reported in the conventional media, the mainstream media, and maybe you might have read it, but you have not given much thought to it. So what we like to achieve here is to have fact-based type of research, and then share with you our views, our conclusion. Of course, some of you would agree, some of you may not agree. Doesn't matter. What we'd like to do is to have a mature, open discussion. So with that, I may dive into this week's topic. Again, I guess you will find that this week's topic is quite unusual, and something that you all might not have thought about, and how it is linked to what is happening to the world, and in particular to Malaysia. So, as you can see in the first image that we have shared with you, April 2024 is going to be the warmest April on record. And April is also the 11th consecutive month of record-breaking global warming. So I guess if you remember, April, March, for us in Malaysia and the rest in Southeast Asia, it was an extremely hot period. The phenomena where heat waves were becoming more extreme was not just confined to Malaysia or Southeast Asia. This is a diagram. It summarizes the situation very clearly. It's updated up to April 2024. The one in the line in yellow, as you can see, the yellow line is above all the other months. This is with reference from 1850 to 1900. So using that as a reference point, you find that April 2024, the surface air temperature for that month is highest on record. And not just April, you look at January, February, March. Looks like the worst that we fear about climate change is already here, and most likely it will worsen. The 1.5 degree warming, global warming that we hope to achieve looks like it's not going to happen, and scientists are already predicting that we're heading for 2 degrees or 2.5 degrees warming. The heat wave in Africa was very severe. Southeast Asia, as we all know, we live in Southeast Asia. The temperature was so hot that some of the corals of the seas in Thailand was bleached. It became white, and the temperature was described as boiling, not warming. Then in the case of Malaysia, this is as of March this year, many parts of the country, many parts of peninsular Malaysia were experiencing extreme heat, and it is pretty unprecedented. You can see this picture here where the paddy field, this is in Selangor, this is not in Kedah, where the heat wave was severe and had impact on a lot of crop production. The next is something that I like to share because I felt very sad by it. I was very emotionally affected by what I read and what I saw. The howler monkeys, as you can see in this, there's the baby howler monkey. This is in Mexico. The weather was so hot that the monkeys were just falling out of the trees like apples, and a lot of them died. If you look at the next photo, this is where the monkeys fell from the tree from the very overheated kind of weather, and I think they counted there were about 100 plus to 200 monkeys that were dead because of this. It is sad, and the monkeys are not responsible at all, the animals are not responsible at all. This climate change, this global warming is all due to human beings, human activities, and there's no one else to blame except human beings. So what we like to highlight is that one of the major contributions, one of the major causes of climate change and global warming comes from the transport sector. The diagram that we show you here is a breakdown of the CO2 emissions by the various segments, components of the transportation sector. You'll notice that passenger road vehicles make up the most, 45%. If you include buses, lorries and all that, there's another about 30%. So if you count land transport, which are cars, essentially cars, and then lorries and buses and taxis, they make up 71%, almost 3/4 of the CO2 emission from the transport sector. Transport sector is the third largest source of carbon emission. And within the transport sector, you notice the one that is most environmentally friendly is railway. That is the most environmentally friendly. Next. And what we want to highlight today is the fact that the auto industry, the global auto car makers, are very deceitful and misleading investors and people like us. The car makers' global emission are actually 50% higher than what they have reported. So they have significantly underestimated the total distance traveled and the fuel, the oil consumption of cars. Next. here you find that this is across the major car makers from BMW to Volkswagen to Honda and so on. Their investments are as carbon intensive as all companies, or in fact some of them like Honda, Ford, Renault and all that are even more carbon intensive than the oil companies. Next. This is, if you can, you look at the bottom, the source of this research paper is from this influence map. It talks about how the global automakers, the actions and the decisions that they have made threaten the global transition to electric vehicles. It's a very new report, it's very up to date, it's only released recently. I would urge you to read it thoroughly. It's written by an NGO based in London. So here what they have found out is that nearly all the major car companies are sabotaging the transition to electric vehicle. And of all the countries that they have studied and the car companies that they have studied, Japan is the worst. They have studied US, Germany, France, Korea, Japan. These are the countries. You can look at the list in the research paper that I mentioned earlier. Next. So here, this is up to 2019. If you look at the automakers among the world, the global automakers, the studies have not, for some reason, they have not researched on the car companies in China. But whatever it is, what they have found out is that if you look at the forecast of fleet, percentage of fleet with zero emission vehicles in 2029, which is about 5 years from now, Tesla, of course, 100%. Then there's Mercedes, 56, BMW, 45. And the Japanese cars are the worst. The Japanese car automakers are the worst. Toyota is only prepared with 14%. That means 5 years from now, 14% of Toyota cars would have zero emission. After that is Honda, after that is Nissan. And the worst, that's not just the worrying part. The other worrying part is that all these large automakers, they are having advocacy strategies that are putting global climate targets at risk. And, like I said earlier, threatening the transition to electric vehicle. Right? So, negative lobbying by these automakers is a key obstacle to climate policy, because a lot of these large car makers, together with the car association, have been lobbying their governments to either eliminate emission standards or lower emission standards, or make it easier for the internal combustion engine cars to survive. Now, the 10 of the 15 automakers analyzed for this report received a performance rating of D or D+, which shows that their advocacy, their lobbying campaign is not aligned with science-based policy. The worst is Toyota, with a performance score of D. It remains the lowest scoring company and is found to be driving opposition to climate rules in multiple countries, multiple regions all over the world. In 2023, last year, Toyota advocated to weaken GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions standards in the US, Australia, and engage against stringent zero emission vehicle mandates in Canada and UK. Toyota. Again, this is for, the earlier diagram was for 2029 target, this is 2030. The Japanese companies, the Japanese auto companies still monopolize the bottom rung. Suzuki by 2030 will have only 10% of its production meeting the electric vehicle targets. Honda 24%, Toyota 29%. Next. And when you do research deeply and carefully and look at objective sources, you find that Toyota has been spreading anti-electric vehicle propaganda in Japan as far back as 2021. It's not just this month or last month. It's as far back as 2021, or if you dig deeper, it goes back even further than that. Next. And this is even worse. Public Citizen is an NGO in America, a public advocacy group, where in 2023 December, they launched this complaint to the FTC, the America's Federal Trade Commission, on Toyota's misleading advertisement. So the Public Citizen asked FTC to investigate and take enforcement action against Toyota for its misleading marketing of gas-powered vehicles as electric vehicles. Let me show you the next one, which is shocking. This is, you can see two photos. On the left, these are photos of Toyota Prius. On the left is seen as hybrid, is branded as hybrid. On the right is branded as HEV, which means electric vehicle. So what the publiccitizen.org did is that they say that Toyota has made an intentional decision to begin describing its hybrids as electric vehicles. The 2022-2023 Priuses are powered the same way with gasoline. America, they call it gasoline, or we call it petrol. But on the 5th generation Prius introduced in 2023, last year, Toyota took away the word hybrid, right, which appeared in Prius from 1997 to 2022, and replaced the word hybrid with the term the consumers in America have never seen before, HEV, as you can see on the right hand side. These new markings gave the very misleading impression that the Prius, the 2023 Prius, is significantly different from traditional hybrids. In other words, the traditional Priuses, and that it uses some new type of electric vehicle technology. Toyota Prius 2023 does not. It is still the same. So you can see the intentional deceit. This is even worse. This is from the same complaint by Public Citizen to the FTC US. Toyota's advertisement says that it's electrified, America's largest electrified lineup. What is wrong? What is so blatantly lying? Toyota claims to offer more electric vehicles than any other brand. Toyota also claims that it has America's largest electrified lineup and that it offers more electrified models than any other brand, creating an impression directly opposite of the truth. In fact, Toyota offers fewer electric vehicles than almost any other competing automaker in America. Yet, Toyota tells you something else. Consumers in America who are interested in electric vehicles will be interested in EVs, right? And according to the complaint to the FTC, for all practical purposes, Toyota offers none of them in America. It offers only 2 EV models and has targeted just 10,000 EV sales in 2023, a figure that equals just 1.3% of the total 750,000 new EV sales in America in 2022. Toyota, that's how deceitful the company is across the world. Next. So why are the Japanese automakers so deceitful? Can Japan be trusted to do the right thing to contribute to global climate innovation, prosperity, and governance? I don't think so. Because you compare Japan with the other G7 countries and even China, it is far behind in renewable energy development. In 2022, the share of electricity generated from renewable sources in Japan was only 22.7%, compared with 38.4% in EU and 30.8% in China. And look at the share of new cars sold that are electric last year in 2023. These electric cars include the fully battery electric and the plug-in hybrids. China, 38% of new cars sold that are electric. EU, 22%. United States, 10%. Japan, 4%. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4%. I mean, it's no wonder that the Japanese government and their Japanese automakers are desperate and misleading the world, misleading the consumers for the sake of what? For the sake of sales. So what they are doing is compromising our climate change policies, our climate change measures, so that they can keep selling us the polluting gasoline cars. The International Energy Agency has a net zero emission scenario by 2050. And to meet that, they say that you have to have 2/3 of your vehicle sales must be electric. It could be battery electric, it could be fuel cell electric, right? By 2020, you must have 66% of that so that you can meet the 1.5 degree Celsius global warming target. Now, Toyota, the largest automaker in 2022, disclosed in its own report that its Scope 3 emissions in 2022 were 575 million tons of carbon dioxide, making Toyota one single Japanese automaker responsible for around 1.5% of all global CO2 emissions in that year. In 2019, Volkswagen, which was the largest automaker at that time, also revealed that it was responsible for about 2% of global carbon emissions, roughly the same as Germany's total emissions. So you could say Volkswagen is as guilty as Toyota. Not correct. Because Volkswagen, if you go back to the earlier diagram, you see, look at this diagram, by 2030, Volkswagen, I'm not sure the diagram, maybe we can make it clearer when we put it up. Volkswagen would have about 57%, they would have met 57% of electric vehicle forecast for 2030, compared with Toyota of only 29%. So while 2019, 2022, the two companies were very responsible for carbon emission globally, you can see that the Toyota is far, far behind Volkswagen. Next. They are the least prepared. The Japanese automakers are the least prepared for EV transition and have the most active strategic engagement against EV transition. The four automakers with the lowest proportion of forecasted electric vehicle production in 2030 are all from Japan. Suzuki at 10%, Honda at 24%, Toyota at 29%, Mazda at 30%. And I mentioned earlier, they have implemented all kinds of campaigns to weaken and delay climate rules, promoting battery electric vehicles in all countries. Like I mentioned, by 2030, 2/3 of vehicle sales must be EVs to reach our target, and by 2035, which is about 10, 11 years from now, almost all new cars must be electric vehicles so that we can let the emissions from transportation, global emissions from the transportation sector to decline 90% from 2020 until 2050 so that we can reach net zero emission. Obviously, Japan is nowhere there. The Japanese automakers are nowhere near those targets. So what can Malaysia and Malaysians do? According to the International Panel on Climate Change, they said in 2022, electric vehicles powered by low emissions electricity offer the largest decarbonization potential for land-based transport on a complete life cycle basis. So you got to use electric vehicles, you got to promote that, you got to produce that. But looks like you got to boycott Toyota, you got to boycott Suzuki, you got to boycott Daihatsu. Every time when you sit in your Toyota Camry, your Lexus, your Toyota Vios or whatever it is, remember the heat wave that we're facing, the climate change that we're facing, part of it comes from the exhaust of your car. So are you still going to continue buying Toyota, Suzuki and Daihatsu, an automaker group that has continuously bluffed and misled consumers all over the world? We should boycott them because there are so many better alternatives. Now, for Malaysia, since Malaysia, we cannot afford to develop the necessary complete infrastructure and ecosystem for EV use nationwide, we would recommend the Anwar administration to develop an efficient and effective domestic, the keyword is domestic, rail connectivity now. Because Malaysia has got very high car population. We've got it's a small country with 34, 33 million people, but our car ownership is extremely high because people need to move around. And while certain cities like KL have got MRT and so on, a lot of other cities don't have efficient public transport. And more importantly, the connectivity between JB to Seremban, to Kuala Lumpur, to Ipoh, to Penang, to Alor, and to Kuantan and to Kota Baru, the connectivity is still not only poor but very energy intensive. So again, I want to repeat my strong recommendation. You may think I'm ignorant, you may think my conclusion, my recommendation is based on false argument. All I know is that if we don't have the efficient and effective domestic rail connectivity, we are doing a lot of damage, not only to Malaysia's climate, but to the climate of the planet. So I hope you, as usual, give your comments. But let me just plead with you when you give comments, please don't go down of attacking personal levels. That is so unprofessional. Like the videos, if you like it, please like it, share it, and please suggest topics so that we can keep on having good public debates, public discussion. With that, I thank you again for listening and have a good weekend.